So thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar. I'm your facilitator, Andrea Salmon, and I've got Birgit O'Shady online as well as our presenter tonight. Just a word of acknowledgement. We acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians past and present on whose lands we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment and the relationship of Aboriginal people to country and respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. This webinar is presented by, as I said, Birgit O'Shady. Now, Birgit's not a member of the multiple sclerosis staff, so we just need to put a bit of a proviso on there, and Birgit will say the same thing, that if anything that we're presenting tonight concerns you or raises some questions for you, by all means seek additional advice. So it's my pleasure to change presenter now and pass you over to Birgit, who will lead us through tonight's topic. Birgit's done this topic once before for us, and I know it was very well received, and she's looking forward to presenting tonight. So I'll turn me off, and you're ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for logging in tonight and having time, to hear a little bit about mood and emotions in MS. And the title of tonight will be How to Act When MS is Making Life Difficult. And just to give you a bit of background information, who is actually talking to you. So my name is Birgit O'Shady. As you maybe can tell, I have a bit of an accent because I'm from Europe, I'm from Austria, and I've done a lot of my training in Vienna and in Switzerland and in Germany, and I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been working in private practice for a few years now, and also worked for Multiple Sclerosis Limited before, in New South Wales before I started to go into private practice. And I guess my training background is always had a special interest in neurodegenerative illnesses and diseases, and while I had this interest, I was always on the lookout for what therapeutic model, what framework would work best to really give people a better quality of life and help them in this very difficult situation. And this is when I came across acceptance and commitment therapy. And acceptance and commitment therapy is in short called ACT. And what we're going to do today is I'm hopefully trying to explain to you a little bit about what is ACT. Why do I think ACT has a really special role in treating people with MS, because I think it's one of the most flexible models and also the most vitality-giving models. Then I'm going to go into the core principles of ACT and how to use them. And I'm just briefly going to go through a couple of worksheets and book recommendations, because I guess the idea is that at the end of this presentation you maybe have a little bit of an idea what ACT is, and maybe can take one or two things away that you could implement in your own life and in your own daily routine. And I know that this is maybe a bit hard, but maybe have also a bit more interest about ACT after this presentation. So just bear with me. And just before we're going to go ahead, maybe this would be a good option for the first poll, Andrea?
Absolutely.
So that we can have a little bit of insight.
So the question is, have you ever experienced acceptance and commitment therapy? Now, Birgit, you're not going to see the results come up too well there, but I'll let you know what the results are. So there's three options: no, you haven't, or you've heard about it, or you've actually had acceptance and commitment therapy. So you can mark one of those, and we'll be interested to know how many people have heard about it or know about it, or maybe some people might have even experienced this type of therapy. So that's about everyone, I think, that's voted. And someone else like to vote? Or I think we might have someone who can't vote. Oh no, there we go. All right. So we've maybe had one person who has had acceptance and commitment therapy. 14% have heard about it, and 83% haven't heard about it or experienced commitment therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy.
Cool, that's really helpful. Thank you everybody for voting, because I'm going to try to give the people who haven't heard about ACT a little bit more info, and maybe the people already experienced ACT or heard about ACT maybe can take something new from it. So basically, the ACT, the Acceptance and Commitment Therapy, stands for accept, choose, and take action. And I'm going to explain a little bit more what that means, really. So, what is ACT? So ACT was founded basically by Stephen Hayes, Callie Wilson, and Kirk Strohseld in the 1980s. Maybe some of you have heard of cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called CBT. Just, I would imagine the most common form of Medicare supported therapy out there. And ACT is a little bit like the third wave of CBT because it's based on a relational frame theory, RFT, and it's basically a very comprehensive theory of language and cognition. And it's an offshoot of behavior and analysis. So what that means is basically, you know, Steve and Callie and Kirk just went away basically and had a look at what's really working, what are good strategies in therapy that makes them really excellent. And they brought them all a bit in and founded this RFT. And on RFT they based ACT on. So it's quite a well-rounded psychological therapy model in my perspective. And it's kind of like trying to aim for various things. And the main thing is how to handle really difficult thoughts and painful feelings. How do you manage them more effectively? Because I guess we all know that, you know, life's not always fair. Life can be very, very difficult and quite challenging at times. I don't need to tell you this. I know I'm very sure all of you have experienced this. But for me, ACT is one of the only models that really addresses this, that acknowledges this. For me, the classical CBT, it falls a bit short in that area. I mean, in the end, it's always up to the therapist. I don't think that there is a pure therapist most of the time out there. Most of the time people use various approaches, but most of the time people have a main training approach from university or from an institute where I did their training. So ACT was really special to me in that regard because it acknowledges, you know what, life sometimes is just not that great. It's very unfair. And the other part that I really enjoy about ACT is basically because it helps people to clarify what is truly important and meaningful to you. Because once you have identified your values is that what gives our life meaningfulness and purposefulness, we then can actually implement value-driven actions and goals. We then have a kind of like a life compass, you know. We then know in what directions do I want to go. And very often when people are faced with a chronic illness like MS, it's hard to implement those values because there are certain forms of restrictions or limits or losses. And as a part of an ACT therapist, I guess it's very often important to find out, so how can you implement those values right now? What can you do today to walk a step further towards the goals that you have in life that give you purpose and meaningfulness and flexibility? So I guess the overall goal of ACT is really to create a rich and meaningful life while accepting that the pain that life inevitably brings. And as you maybe see, there is not talking about happiness in there because it's hard to have happiness all the time if life is difficult, but it's about finding a purpose and a meaningfulness interpretation of your life in that situation. And that's why I like it so much. And this is why I believe ACT is one of the, in my opinion, one of the best models for treating people with MS because it acknowledges the difficulty of the situation. Just before we maybe go into the core principles of ACT, maybe you want to run the second poll, Andrea, just before I go more into detail, please?
For sure. This one's asking, have you ever had counselling or psychological therapy? So again, you've got 3 different options. Yes, you have. Maybe no, you haven't. Or you're thinking about starting therapy. So the question again, have you ever had counselling or psychological therapy? It's a yes or a no, or you're thinking about starting it. And I think that'll be really helpful for Birgit to get a sense of people's just awareness of the whole process. So that's great. I think that's just about everybody. That's everybody voted. So 61% of the group have had some counselling or psychological therapy, 32% haven't, and a couple of people are thinking about starting therapy.
Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing that information. And it's a shame that I can't talk to you guys right now, because I would obviously be very curious about your experiences and your opinions about it. And hopefully, if you haven't experienced ACT before, maybe there's something new that you can take from it. I guess generally, if I guess research tells us that if you have a really, really good relationship with your therapist, and this is one of the golden standards, this is the most important thing above all. But I hope that maybe today a different model can also show you some things that maybe you don't know.
And people can write comments in the question section if they want to make some comments.
Awesome. That's cool. So please, I hope that people don't take, ACT is the only valid, proper treatment out there. This is not what I want to say. What I'm saying is you need to find what works for you, but maybe ACT is something to explore. So I hope I don't come across as a therapist now. But let's talk a little bit about what makes ACT really. So ACT has a couple of core principles, and as you can see on the slide, the first one would be having contact with the present moment. It's called mindfulness in other terms very often, and for example CBT has a lot of mindfulness nowadays in there as well. And basically what we mean with being in the present moment is be really in the now, be present in the situation right now. Because I don't know about your mind, but my mind loves to worry about the future, and it is a master of going back into the past where I can't change things. So either I'm in the past where I can't change things, or worry about the future, which doesn't help me either. So technically, the only time when I really can take action is in the present moment. That's the only gift that I really have. And it's a bit sad that our cultural situation is not really enhancing this very much. It's very hard for people to stay in the present moment. And when people do mindfulness exercise, we can always see that it's a skill that has to be learned. And I'm a very impatient person, I have to admit. So for me, this is definitely something that challenges me on a daily basis. But once you have the compassion towards yourself, to allowing yourself to just give it a go and not be too judgmental towards yourself if you don't do well, then a whole new world opens up to you, a less pressured world, and a more grateful world, I guess, opens up as well. So that's the mindfulness part. The other part is called your chosen values. So values are knowing what matters in your life and letting your values guide your actions. I'm going to talk about this a bit later on, and I will talk about all of those principles a bit more in detail. But basically, values are the compass of your life. Knowing where do I want to walk, how do I get there, what's my destination, and who do I want to be in life. The next part is committed action. It's basically effective mental and physical actions guided by values. So if I know, for example, I want to walk towards Brisbane, I know that I have to get somewhere on a road that goes north from Sydney. So it's basically putting steps into place that bring me to the destination where I want to go. And for example, an ACT therapist will help you identify what are your values right now in this situation, or what could a committed action be in this moment that you can get where you want to be. Do you actually know where your destination is? Or do you have too high standards of how this should look like? Because very often people say, 5 years ago I knew what my values were, but life changed. Life was unfair. Life was really difficult. So I don't know right now. And then it's about finding out how could that look like right now with all those difficulties and maybe limits you have to face and still find purpose. And I see a lot of people. I see maybe, between 20 and 25 people a week, depending how many people I see. But I believe in this model. Like I could see people having a change in their quality of life because they implemented those things, and they were very, very challenged situations for those people. Like they were really, you know, suffering some form of illness, and it gave them a great sense of purpose to do that. So that would be committed action with chosen values, and the next part is called self as context. Self as context is a bit an abstract thing. You know, it's called the observing self, the pure awareness of thoughts and behaviors and moods, and it's a bit hard to know what that means, but basically it means can you take a step back and look from the outside into your life, like like a bird flying on top of your life and just taking an objective perspective without getting caught up in your thoughts and behaviors and moods, and just take a step back. Are you able to just observe for an hour and just realize what's happening without getting caught into the situation? The next part is called the thought diffusion. Thought diffusion basically means getting distance to your thoughts, becoming aware that thoughts are not facts. Nope, they just are something that your mind came up with, like a deep breath. You know, they're not facts. I know that society tells us that thinking is really, really important, and you know, some thoughts, they are really important. But I don't know about your brain, but my brain has a lot of rubbish in there too. Like my brain comes up with a lot of things where I'm like, nah, that was not good or not helpful. So science really noticed that it's really helpful to be able to diffuse. So diffusion means having space between you and your thoughts, disconnecting from your thoughts and just detaching from them, and without giving them any meaning or any judgment, just observe them, just go, yeah, there's a thought, that's all it is. You know, just kind of like learning to step away and go like, yeah, that's just a thought, that's an interesting thought. And learning that if your mind has any negative self-talk, like, you know, that critical self-dialogue that some of us experience, that we go like, yeah, that doesn't say anything about me, that's just a thought, that's just neurons firing away, that's just some chemical reaction in my brain. So that would be thought diffusion. And the next part is called acceptance and willingness. Acceptance and willingness is basically accept to what comes into your life, and having the ability to live with it without having to, you know, avoid certain things or engage in unhelpful behaviors or deny certain things. And I believe that acceptance and willingness is one of the hardest ones, especially with MS, and I think that's also one of the areas where a lot of courage and patience and self-compassion and support is needed. So for me, that's a key discipline very often. And you know, if you put all those core principles together, the idea is that the goal that you will reach is psychological flexibility. You're being present, you know, you're being open, you're doing what matters to you. And very often with psychological flexibility comes happiness. So maybe you notice that this model doesn't say, you know, the outcome will be happiness. And that's just because therapists and psychologists and everyone who has interest in that field notice that, you know, it's not always about happiness. We don't have, there is no choice sometimes to not be happy. Like sometimes happiness is not the right emotional response. Sometimes anger might be it, or sadness. And they're equally important. Happiness is only a small part of the emotional range that we experience. So obviously we like being happy, but to stay healthy, to stay emotionally flexible, we also need to experience maybe all the difficult emotions, like, you know, disgust or shame or embarrassment or anger or sadness, all those more uncomfortable emotions. So I hope I could give you a little bit of an insight to how this could really look like. And I'm just going to give you now, sorry, it didn't work. a little bit of an insight how to use those practical tools. Like how can you use these core principles in dealing with MS? So now this is kind of like I explained the model.
Big.
But I tried. Yeah.
Sorry. Someone's made a comment that when they were first diagnosed, their neurologist sent them to a psychiatrist for grief therapy because they'd lost the life that they were living before MS, and it helped relieve a lot of anger that they hadn't even been aware of.
Was it helpful to that person?
I think it seems like it was.
It was, yeah.
From what they've said.
It's you know, it's like I said, acceptance, and that it's one of the most humbling, and for me, like, I have a lot of, I look up to people who can integrate that part into their life because it's difficult, you know. It's a very personal thing. So if that worked for that client, that's awesome.
Yeah, and they've come back and said, yes, it did.
That's really cool. Well done. Massive respect for that. Any more questions?
No, that's the only one that's come in.
Cool.
But please put them in.
All right. Yes, please do. So just to come back, so basically, I try to be practical in therapy because that's how I would benefit from going to therapy, and that's how I benefited in the past because, you know, psychologists, usually most of us go to regular therapy just so that we can keep learning and that we know what's happening. So how can we make those core principles really practical, and how could it help you guys? So let's come back to the first core principle, and that was, you know, how to contact the present moment, the whole mindfulness thing. So mindfulness is basically a state of awareness where you are participating fully and effectively in the present moment. So you want to be really noticing what's happening. You want to be non-judgmental. You want to really be open and participating with all your senses in that moment, so like with a one mind, and you want to be effective about it. And I was thinking that maybe this would be a good option to do a practical exercise. So I've prepared a little experiential exercise, and none of you have to do this. So, you know, if you feel like, yeah, I don't want to participate, please, you don't have to. It's just basically a mindfulness breathing exercise that I would talk to you guys through. Maybe some of you have done it already, but I thought, you know, this would be something maybe that you can take away from here and really experience mindfulness instead of me talking about it. So whoever would like to participate in this, it's basically just a couple of minutes. I'm guiding you through this practice, and all you need to do is please find a comfy spot where it's maybe quiet and you can hear me, and just, you know, really try to find a spot where you can sit for maybe 5 minutes comfortably without having to go anywhere, without being disturbed. And, you know, just get rid of any tight clothing or any constrictions that you have, and just try to get yourself as comfortable as you can. And maybe, you know, if in your lounge room, maybe you want to lie down on the couch, no one can see you, so that's the big advantage you guys have. So just try to really get comfy and make sure, you know, that you find a spot where you feel safe and comfy and uninterrupted. And I just, you know, invite you that if it feels right with you, just close your eyes for a moment and just start noticing how your focus maybe turns internally. If you decide to keep your eyes open, just focus on a point and let your eyes diffuse that focus. And just gently start bringing your attention to your body as a whole. And just notice, you know, maybe there might be some tightness or some physical sensations, and just breathe into these areas very gently, and just let the breath take its normal flow into your body. Just notice how when you're breathing in, how the air goes into your nose, down to your throat, into your lungs, down to your belly. And just become really aware and focused on your breathing. Just really notice how it feels to be breathing. So the idea is that every time your mind tries to distract you, you just come back to your breathing and you just want to be like a scientist, exploring how it feels to be breathing. What do you notice when you're breathing? And just don't try to force anything. Just be really gentle and soft in your mind. So if you focus on your breathing and you notice, oh, you know, I've been thinking about dinner or what I have to do at work or what I'm going to do after this, just gently, really softly come back to the present moment, to your breathing, and just say, oh, that was just a thought. Just come back to how your breathing feels. So, you know, be curious. Be curious like a kid that has never seen someone taking a breath. So maybe, you know, you notice that when you're breathing in, the air is a tad cooler, just a little bit cooler. Can you notice that? And then it warms while you're breathing it down into your lungs. Just really investigate if you can notice that. Or maybe you notice that when you're breathing out, the airstream touches the top of your upper lip a little bit. There's kind of like a tiny tickle. It's very gentle, it's very soft. But just try to feel how it feels to be breathing. And, you know, if your mind hooks you in and really distracts you, that's normal. All of us do it. Don't get upset about it. Don't get angry about it. The only goal is that if your mind hooks you 1,000 times, you want to come 1,001 times back to your breathing. Just re-establish that connection with your breathing and that interest. So while you keep breathing, maybe you notice any other sensations. Maybe you notice that, you know, one nostril is more dominant than the others. Because, you know, nostrils change the dominance every 8 hours or so. So really have a feel for it, like, you know, it's the same amount of air coming through my nose, so it's maybe my left side a bit more open. And just really start noticing how your breathing is part of you and how you can stay in this very present moment. It doesn't get more present than looking at your breathing. And just be gentle when you drift off. It's normal. Very, very normal. Don't get upset. Don't criticize yourself. Don't be harsh. Hold the position of being, you know, curious, be engaged, but non-judgmental. And then I'm just going to let you for a minute or so just do the breathing by yourself. Without any guidance, just notice how it feels to be breathing. If you want, you can also put your hand on your tummy so that you can assist yourself to be even more mindful, because you can feel the tummy expanding. And then just really notice when your mind's hooking you in. And just try to come back to your breathing. And if you have your eyes closed, just gently start noticing maybe sounds around you again, and start noticing the light in the setting where you're sitting and light. And maybe just slowly start coming out of this relaxive state and just gently bring a bit of movement into your body, just, you know, ever so lightly, just very gently, just create a bit of a ritual to be present with me again. And then whenever you're ready, just, you know, come back to the presentation, come back to me, please. And just, you know, acknowledge what you've done. You just tried something new, which is really cool and really great. And I just really want to stress that mindfulness is a skill. You have no idea how mindfulness was very frustrating to me. I once did a course for, I think 6 weeks, it was a 6 weeks mindfulness course, and I struggled so hard. I had, this expectation that I needed to do really, really well, that my mind should stop throwing all these things towards me, all those negative thoughts, all this self-doubt. And I was waiting for that moment when my mind would be empty, when my mind would be free. And I had to talk to my teacher, and she's like, you're waiting for the wrong things, because science at the moment takes more the approach of you won't be able to stop your mind, you may be able to calm it down, but you will always have thoughts. So it's more about having the awareness to be coming back in the moment, that you choose that you want to be aware and that you don't give up on that. And sometimes mindfulness doesn't bring relaxation. Mindfulness and relaxation are usually two different things. People very often become more relaxed after doing mindfulness, but technically mindfulness sometimes doesn't bring that state. It brings psychological flexibility, it brings psychological awareness. So just be aware of that, and also have a real close look at your expectations, what you want out of this. And just, be really gentle with yourself, and don't have high expectations. It's a skill that has to be learned lifelong, I imagine, but it's really, really interesting if you manage to be more mindful, how flexible you get and how more interesting life gets usually. I mean, that's at least how I found it. Normally I would ask how other people found it, but let's move on from this right now. But I guess technically what I want to say is you can do mindfulness in anything. You can do mindfulness breathing, drinking, walking, visualization, touch, you can do your washing up mindfully, or you can brush your teeth mindfully. I have at the moment a couple who do who integrated mindful touches and sex practices into their work, because they sometimes get so caught up in their thoughts. So you can really do a lot with mindfulness, and there are lots of great free resources out there. Like Headspace, for instance, has a free mindful app, and YouTube is full with mindfulness videos. Like, it's out there in abundance. And I guess, if you want to really, if I was a bit unclear what mindfulness is, I thought this picture might illustrate what it is about. So it's about, really focusing on what's happening around me today, and not being occupied with, your to-do list that we all have. So that's mindfulness.
You good? There's been some comments made. Someone made the comment that it sounds very familiar to those who know or understand some of the basic principles of Buddhism.
Yep, mindfulness is based in Buddhism.
Yep.
A big part of, yep.
And then someone else has said they find it hard to accept MS. It has messed up their brain, and they don't think clearly, and they don't know how to express their values.
Yeah, I hear the frustration. I really, really do, and I really feel for that person, because it's a very frustrating thing to identify what's happening and struggling to put changes in place. And look, there is no recipe for this solution, unfortunately. All I can do is really encourage this person to have maybe some professional assistance, maybe someone who's trained in helping people find their values or do those things. But yeah, I'm very sorry that I can't give them a recipe out there what to do.
But it could be an option might be to give MS Connect a call tomorrow and see if, I'm not sure where this person is living, but if there was someone that MS Connect could connect them with for some further advice.
Yeah. And I don't know about this person, but ACT therapists or other therapists, they're quite popular, so everyone can go to their GP and ask for, it's called a mental health care plan, which gives them a rebate from their sessions, and they can get professional help. Like, psychologists are usually quite trained in doing those types of things. You don't need a mental health care plan, it's just most people do it because psychology is not a 1 hour wonder usually, it's a bit of a journey. So yeah, but if anyone has questions about how to access a psychologist, I'm happy to answer questions at the end, or I'm sure MS Connect helps, or generally MS resources are really good for questions like that.
There's a couple more.
Can I move on?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Someone says they already see a psychologist when they were diagnosed. They were already seeing someone. And a lot of the work that they did with her was using ACT, and it got me through the darkest moments. Yoga helps too, especially with breathing and being in the moment.
That's really good feedback. Thank you so much for sharing that.
And then someone's asked, is mindfulness the same as meditation?
It could be. Depends what type of meditation this person's doing. There's so many different types of meditation out there. Mindfulness is a form of meditation, but, you know, for example, some meditations, they have a mantra, or some meditations, you know, they send positive thoughts to a certain person. So mindfulness is meditation, and, you know, I guess there's so many different types of meditation out there that a person needs to kind of like suss out what works for them.
Yeah.
Mindfulness is one of the reason why, as I'm a clinical psychologist, why we do mindfulness is because it's scientifically backed up. So, you know, because we usually work hand in hand with Medicare. Medicare asks us to practice the golden standard of therapy, so we are very research-driven nerds, I guess. I'm a very nerdy person. So this is why we do mindfulness and maybe not some other forms, because mindfulness has really strong research, you know, that some of the brain anatomy really can change and can get more resilient, and people usually feel a lot better. And a good thing about mindfulness is also there's a lot online out there. So, you know, like the person said, yoga helps. Yoga has a lot of mindfulness naturally involved in it, or there are online courses about mindfulness, there's CDs about mindfulness. So there's a lot out there about mindfulness.
And another suggestion's been made that the benefits of being involved in a face-to-face peer support group.
Yeah, definitely. You
with
know,
other people.
Having support is one of the most valuable things that's out there, you know. Like, this is something that science can't replace, in my opinion. So yeah, surround yourself by people you feel understood by. Surround yourself by people that you have something in common with, that understand the frustration. You know, don't go through it alone. Get in touch with people who know what you're talking about. And it's really fascinating, because I'm always so amazed about this, because I have people, you know, coming to me or asking to see me, and they have to travel quite a bit. Like, I have a lady, she travels 2 hours to come to a session, and I'm always amazed how people are willing to travel if they really feel like they feel connected with the person. I'm not saying this has to be me, you know, it can be anybody, but if you have someone in your life that you really feel you can open up to, strengthen that friendship, strengthen that contact, and yeah, nurture it, because it's good. Anything else?
No, that's all for now.
And
that's all for now.
Okay. Then moving on to the second core principle. So this is about values. So, like I said briefly before, values is your life compass. It is about, what do you want your life to stand for? What type and sort of person do you want to be? And, you know, this is also about, very often we have an idea who we want to be when we're younger. But then if there's a challenging life situation coming up, usually there's it's called a reality slap, you know. It's not that what we don't have the life that we wanted to have, maybe. I don't know any person who ever woke up and said, I want to have MS one day. This is not a choice. So I guess the challenge is, you know, what type of person you want to be in such a difficult circumstance. Like, who do you want to be now? And it takes a lot of strength to ask those questions, and it's not an easy journey most of the time. And it's also, you know, values are also about what type of relationships do you want to build? What gives life meaningfulness and purposefulness? And how do you want to behave in this world towards others and towards yourself? You know, what do you want to do with your life, even while having MS? You know, and I mean, I know that these questions are really easy when life is good, and you know, when you're not faced with such a challenge as MS. But there is a book out there, and it's written by Viktor Frankl, and he's an Austrian psychiatrist, and he had to go into the concentration camp, and he was the founder of existential psychoanalysis. And he was, to my understanding, he was the founder of values work. He looked really into what gives people's existence meaning. And he based this theory on his experience in a concentration camp. And, you know, he lost so much. He lost so many people he loved. And even he found still values in those really, 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 really dark moments. And he wrote a book about it, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I think I have it in my references. Do I? No, I don't. So, sorry, it's called Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And it's a really cool book. It's a very sad, dark book, but it also shows how people can find value in very difficult circumstances. And I'm just wanting to do a little question that you guys can ponder upon a little bit, another exercise like the breathing exercise before. And it's just a bit a question to you, really, and something you can think about for the next couple of days. But I guess the question really is, if I, for whatever reason, I would have a magic wand. And with this magic wand, I would make all those difficult and painful thoughts and feelings and memories disappear. So I'm not saying that MS goes away. All I'm saying is I help you make those uncomfortable thoughts and emotions go away. What would you be doing? What would you be doing if your mind wouldn't nag you? What would you do if the emotions wouldn't be so difficult and uncomfortable? What actions would you do? If I had a video of you and I would wave this magic wand, what would I see? What would you be doing? What would you change? Would you maybe call on a friend? Would you maybe laugh more? Would you maybe show more interest in things? Would you maybe be more proactive? Would you maybe have more social engagements? What would you do? Would you be more funny? Would you be more humorful? Would you give more advice? I don't know. But what would you do if I had a magic wand and I could make all those painful thoughts and feelings and memories go away? What would you be? What would you be doing? And I just really encourage you that you think about this. If all those painful thoughts and feelings would be gone, what would you be doing right now? What stops you from doing those things? If you could let go of those difficult thoughts and emotions, what would you be doing? So I really think that this is a question that we should ask ourselves all the time, not just, you know, once every blue moon. Like I ask myself this question quite often, you know, what would I be doing right now? What type of person do I want to be in this pretty shitty situation? What type of person do I want to be right now? And sometimes, you know what type of person you want to be and you struggle to implement it, but then at least you know who you want to be, what you want to do. You have a direction, you have a goal where you want to go towards. Like, for instance, I had a client this week and he said, you know, I want to have adventure as a value. I want to be an adventurous person. So he also has a chronic illness. He also has, he doesn't have MS, but it's also neurodegenerative disease. And he said, you know, I'm very limited in what I can do. And so we spent quite a bit of on and off about this topic. How can he implement adventure into his life right now? And, you know, obviously the first thing was, you know, I want to travel, which is very hard for him because he's in a wheelchair and has full-time care. But what he could do, what he in the end came to the conclusion with, he's like, I can be adventurous in my mind and in my everyday to-day action. So for him, you know, it's about, is he adventurous in meeting new people? Is he adventurous in trying new foods if he goes to a restaurant? Is he adventurous in listening to podcasts that really inspire him? And it's about, you know, can you give yourself permission to just explore what adventure might be for you? Do you have the courage to explore what adventure might be, or do you dismiss it? And I'm very aware that this is difficult. You know, please don't think that, you know, just because I'm sitting on this side I know everything, it's so easy to do. I'm very aware how difficult those things are. But my job is today to inspire you and tell you it's possible, you know, small steps, not big steps, small steps, but consistent steps. You know, one day a little bit, next day a little bit more. So hopefully that will help you then to, even in, you know, difficult circumstances, look at yourself and go, like, yeah, I like that. You know, I think I did a good job how I behaved, was the type of person I wanted to be, I had the sort of relationship that I wanted to have. So I guess, you know, this goes hand in hand with the next point, and the next point is committed actions. Basically, do what it takes. So you want to take really effective action guided by your values. You know, you want to follow your internal value compass and really set one foot after another to find a rich and meaningful life. And very often, it's a bit like this picture here now. You know, we very often know what our values are, you know. It was so funny. Before I came to Australia, I knew that, oh yes, I want to be a surfer. I want to learn how to surf. So I was watching all the surf competitions and all those shows. But I really struggled in Australia to implement those things. So life is not knowing what our values are. It is the journey to our values. You know, it's trying out what it actually means to have those values. So trying, you know, for example, for Australians this might be really funny, but for me, meaning to learn how to surf meant that I have to learn how to properly swim first, because in Austria doesn't have an ocean, so I was okay to pool, but pool is no means the ocean. So, you know, it's every day getting used to taking a step and not getting disencouraged when we don't meet these big standards of values that we have, like, you know, the outcome that we want to have. And we very often dismiss the small steps. We very often say, you know, the small steps are not important. I want to be a full-time adventurer. Who can be a full-time adventurer? Not many people can. So that's an acceptance where you also have to accept the limitations of things. However, that doesn't mean that you can't have adventure as a value. So just, you know, be aware when you have standards that you can't meet, and just try to break it down into small steps, little steps, every day. So if your value is kindness, humor, adventure, curiosity, creativity, you know, how can you do it in a small step? That's what you can ask yourself today. What can I do today to make one step? All I'm asking is for one step towards that direction that you want to have in your life.
Birgit, there's been a couple of comments made about frustration.
Yeah.
So someone had asked, how do you deal with frustration? But then someone else has added another comment that really goes with that. And they've said, I imagine many people have the same values as they did before the MS diagnosis, but how do you get past the frustration of what could have been? Example, being an adventurer and having to take the second best option of imagination over reality.
This is remember when I talked about, for me, kind of like the king core principle of acceptance, and oh my God, this is something, you know, this is a very, very hard thing. I think this is really one of the things where I really have a lot of respect for people who have to take on this journey, how to find this acceptance of this, you know, this is my second best choice, this is not what I want to have. And that basically in therapy what we would do is basically, you're allowed to be frustrated, you're allowed to be very angry about this. Just because you know where you want to be and you know you understand what to do doesn't mean you can't have those thoughts. Why wouldn't you be frustrated? Why wouldn't you be angry? How would be bloody angry? So it's also about letting people have the acceptance of their emotions and letting them know it's okay to feel those things, because that's a normal reaction. And as I would say, you know, if people come to me, this is a room where you feel free to express that and talk about it and tell me how you feel. I think it would be unrealistic to tell someone you're not allowed to feel this way, because I think that would be just wrong. Like, isn't that a normal human response? Like, no, I think, you know, having emotional support in that situation and being there for that person and helping the person to establish compassion towards themselves, that it's very painful to go through, and how can they have a relationship with themselves that are allowed to be that way while acting in a way that they can support. Because very often it's about, you're allowed to be very angry and frustrated, you're allowed to express that, you're allowed to feel those things, and I don't want that, you know, shut those things down, because that's not healthy either. But how can you also put actions into place that you're happy with? Because most of the time, for instance, when, let's say, I'm frustrated, I might get snappy at my kids and my husband. So how can I be frustrated and angry while not doing things that I don't want to do? So it's, in therapy, we very often look at those two things. Because if I don't act in a self-congruent way, in a way that I want to act, it actually hurts me more. It actually takes a bigger toll on me. So I hope I didn't confuse everybody right now. Is that clear, what I want to say?
So someone's adding that someone said yes, that it was clear, and someone's added that they're very frustrated, feel very frustrated and helpless. Yep. Now, I do know that this person's also getting some help from a therapist, so all I would add to that is make sure you talk about it.
Yeah, really get support. Like, this is, you know, this is really one of those things where you need support by people you love and like, yeah. and always, you know, surround yourself by those people that you feel supported with, and don't be shy of asking for help, because you're giving a backpack of life that's not easy.
Yeah.
And you didn't want that backpack, so, you know, you're allowed to be angry and frustrated.
Yeah.
So just, you know, yeah, really support yourself, because it's a, like I said, acceptance and that type of topic is a very, very challenging topic. So get the support you can get. Just to let you guys know, technically by Medicare, everyone can get 10 sessions, business psychologist or clinical psychologist in a year. So, you know, every year you can go back, if you are able to have that support in your life, go back and use it, because you qualify for ongoing support, because, yeah, would be helpful. But I'm aware that not everyone can tap into this, and I know it has its very own challenges, and Medicare is really ignoring a lot of those needs. So I'm just saying, if anyone has the support, you can have 10 sessions each calendar year with a psychologist or clinical psychologist. Any other questions?
No, that's all for now.
Okay. All right. So the next core principle would be self as context. It's like the pure awareness. This is like, you know, when you step back and you look at your life from a bird's eye perspective. It's basically, it's split into the mind is basically split into the thinking self and the observing self, you know. For example, right now while I'm talking, I can notice that I'm thinking and talking. I have an instant in me that knows what's happening, like it knows what I'm going to do. And the thinking self is basically generating thoughts, beliefs, memory, attachments, whereas the observing self is just awareness, basically. You know, we're thinking of ourselves. We have the bird's eye perspective. And the thinking self, as the self as context, the pure awareness, is often really, really helpful just to step back a bit and kind of look from the outside in and really go like, so what's happening here? Like, you know, what am I doing that's helpful or not helpful? Am I missing anything? Or how do I perpetuate this problem? So just, you know, if you feel really caught up into something, or you really get entangled with all the problems, just try to step back, just look from the outside in, and sometimes that just gives a bit of a relief. And it's basically, I tried to explain it in this picture that I found. It basically means, you know, You are the sky, not the clouds. You're not your thoughts of that you're incapable, that the emotion that you're sad or stupid or angry or pain. They're just clouds. You are the sky. You notice when the clouds pop up. You notice when there's rain coming. You notice when the sunshine's coming. You know when the moon's about to rise or the sun's about to go down. So just bring in that awareness and just give yourself some relief by stepping back, and instead of getting caught up into, you know, the anger or the pain, just step back and go, oh, okay, I don't need to get caught in. I can just step back and watch the clouds. I don't need to be in the cloud. So this is a bit what goes with the mindfulness. They go a bit hand in hand, you know, when you can say, oh, I notice anger. I don't have to get invested. I can just let it pass. I just notice it. I just go, there's anger. There's a thought. That's an interesting thought. But I'm not going to, oh, there's anger. Why am I angry? What is it doing? What is happening? So it's just a bit distancing yourself from it. Just observe. So remember, you're the sky, not the clouds. And some people also say I'm a mountain and not the clouds. So mountains just observe. They don't do anything. They just stand there proud and strong. So just keep that image in mind. The next principle is what we call diffusion, thought diffusion. It's basically you want to, you know, watch your thinking. And it helps you to detach and step back from your thoughts and images and memories, you know. You basically see that our thoughts are just what they are, nothing more than words, pictures, or neurological activity in our mind. So just become aware that, you know, you're just having a thought, and the thought is not a fact. And I really want to encourage you guys that you understand that we, all of us, everybody, every single human person on this planet walks through life with glasses on. They have a mental filter. And those glasses, their filter has been determined by your life experiences, you know, how you grew up, how your family raised you, what you've been witnessing, how you got positively or negatively reinforced, what you have experienced. So our brain very early learns to look at things through a certain filter, a certain image, like glasses, a bit like this. And for example, when I'm a self-critical person, when I'm an anxious person, then everything that I look through these glasses in life, everything's being through this filter of, you know, if I'm critical, how could I do this better? How could I improve this situation? How could I make it better? Whereas if you're maybe an anxious person, like, ooh, what do I have to look out for? What's going to happen? Should I be worried about this? You know, should I avoid this situation? So we all have those glasses on in our life, and we call it fusion. So you're fused with that world outlook through these color glasses for your experiences. And the difficulty about this is that those glasses, they're biased. They're faulty. They're not neutral. And the trick is now, how can you remove those glasses? How can you diffuse from these glasses? Take them down, because they're not cool glasses. They're not glasses that we like. You know, they're not Gucci, Prada, whatever, Ray-Bans, whatever you want to have. But when you're able to put those glasses down, you see your emotions for whatever they are. Like you don't have to filter off, you know, sadness, anxiety, worrying, criticalness, pessimism on it. Just take them down. Because if you look through life with glasses too long, everything becomes fairly similar, and it's not helpful. And I want to show you a little bit how those unhelpful thinking styles, how those unhelpful fusion with thoughts, those getting caught up with thoughts looks like. And I just picked 5 unhelpful thinking patterns. And for example, most of people experience them some stages in their life, and I just modified them to people with MS. You know what MS does a lot, because you know MS also goes usually with not always, but sometimes with neurological processes and degenerative processes. So, for example, black and white thinking is very common. You know, it's quite a bit of an all or nothing approach, you know. Maybe, you know, you say things, you know, because you exaggerate things basically, you know, you say because my whole life is over now because I have MS, and you fail to see the grey areas where life is still good. Or maybe you have a lot of should statements, you know, you set very high expectations that are a bit unrealistic, and you really go through your life with, I should be doing this, I must be doing this, and unfortunately that very often leads to disappointment and guilt when you fail. So this would be very much about how can you take care of yourself, how can you build self-esteem, how can you be realistic, how can you set yourself up for winning and not failing. And MS is very challenging in this because it you know, maybe your energy levels fluctuate, your fatigue levels fluctuate quite a bit. So it might be every day you have to reassess what's possible today and not have too high shoulds. Like fatigue management is very, very, very big when people come and see me for, because they usually exert themselves too much, and it leads to frustration and you know, obviously physical exhaustion as well. The next part that sometimes happens is called labeling or name calling. It's where you really overgeneralize, and you know, you label yourself out of frustration. Like, oh, why did I do that for? I'm such an idiot. And just be aware that, you know, negative self-talk is not helpful. I know a lot of people say I don't mean it like that, but just don't do it. Not good enough. Life's hard enough, so you don't need to feed that part. Another unhelpful thinking style is catastrophization. So basically you have a small problem and you turn into this huge mountain of problems, and you really focus on the unpleasantness and the unforgiveness, and you exaggerate things. If you have a bad start to your day, you assume that your whole day is over. Fortune telling basically means that, you know, you predict a negative outcome for the future without any solid evidence. Like, you know, obviously a lot of, which is so understandable, you know, people are very worried about their future when they have MS, and as soon as, I would be the same. This is not criticism, it's just, you know, be aware when your mind is not helping you. When you, for example, see someone in a wheelchair and you are worried that this is maybe what happens to you if you see someone, you know, who needs to have more assistance. That may be what scares you. And I just encourage you to really stay in the present moment and take things factual based. Like, as long as you don't have facts, don't feed it with your mind. Don't go there. Just be really in the present moment and be aware that your mind is maybe worrying and tries to tell the future. And also mind reading is a bit like that, you know, when you assume that you know how someone's reacting because of without you asking them. Like, there's a lot of assumptions, I guess. Mind reading and assumptions go hand in hand, and I'm assuming how people know. And I really want to encourage you that, you know, especially when dealing with health professionals like myself, tell us what you feel, tell us what you think. Also give them feedback about the service. Like, for example, in psychology, I will make mistakes in therapy. Like, I'm not a perfect therapist by no means. So I will make a mistake in therapy. The longer you work with me, the more likely it is that I say something wrong, or I will hurt, unfortunately, your feelings without wanting to, just by mistake. But in those situations, please tell the other person, like tell your health professional how it made you feel, and address these things instead of ignoring it and not coming back. Because I guess with MS, you know, you are surrounded by a lot of health professionals, so communication is really key, that you tell people when you are being hurt, when something is not comfortable for you, when something is unpleasant. So just really communicate with your support people in your life, so that we make sure that communication is good and we understand what's happening. So this is a bit about, you know, unhelpful thinking, unhelpful thought diffusions, and in those moments just really focus on, you know, what are factual basis, what's actually happening right now, what are my values, and just really try to be in the present moment as the antidote, and really try to notice when you catastrophize, when you know, engage in any of the other unhelpful thinking patterns. The next part that we mentioned a few times today is basically acceptance and willingness. So frustration, anger, and sadness are very common ones in therapy, and that's fair enough. Like, why wouldn't you be? I would be I have a lot of respect for a lot of clients because I'm like, well, you know, you have so much strength in this area than I do. And so what acceptance means very often is, you know, you want to allow yourself, you want to make room for those painful feelings, sensations, urges, and emotions. So instead of fighting them, resisting them, controlling them, or running away from them, or avoiding them, open up and let them be. You know, if the walking stick is scary, open up to those feelings of whatever that might be. If it is, you know, grieving about the loss of not being able to walk, if it's embarrassment, whatever it is, let yourself have a space where you can talk about it or feel those things. And it's so fascinating. Like, there is an exercise in the ACT therapy where people are encouraged to put their hand on wherever they're feeling that emotion, and just imagine that they put, you know, that they close their eyes and then visualize that sunlight is touching that difficult emotion, whatever it is, you know, sadness, anger, frustration, embarrassment. And very often I encourage them to tell me, so how would that emotion look like? If you could give it a shape, what would it look like? What color would it have? What temperature would it have? And then to explain it to you. And then you just visualize sunlight touching it. And after 5-6 minutes, very often people say, you know, the emotion gets smaller. You look at the emotion and the emotion gets softer or less dominant. So it's about, you know, having the space of being okay with showing emotions while acting to your values. I guess that's the recipe. And, you know, please don't mean, I'm not saying, you know, that you have to want those emotions or that you have to like them. By no means, I'm not saying this. All I'm saying is if it's there, it's there. So instead of pushing it down or avoiding it, just let it be. And I know this is very difficult to do. So take your time, be compassionate towards yourself and not too harsh. And just take it step by step. Because, you know, if you're avoiding your emotion, you're just going on a detour, because it costs a lot of energy to suppress emotions or to hide them or to avoid them. You could be doing things that you find a lot more meaningful and vital than putting all this energy to avoiding your emotions. And oh my God, you have all the reasons in the world to have difficult emotions right now, because MS is by no means something you wished for, something easy to deal with.
Birgit, there's been a comment come in.
Yeah.
The greatest problem this person has with MS is the loss of freedom and independence. I don't work and now I don't drive. Most of the time I don't think about it. I have family willing to take me, but it's the losses of independence that I find hard to deal with. Any thoughts on that?
Look, I'm always so tempted to go like, can I talk to this person? Because I want to know more. But first of all, it's a very challenging situation. I did my master's thesis on loss of independence and autonomy. So I did, I mean, it's a couple of years ago now, but I did a lot of research about it, and it was, you know, it's still one of the most hurtful and difficult things to overcome. So what I learned over the years is that be autonomous and independent in the areas you can be, like really stress that, because sometimes, you know, family just all of a sudden made a mental note of, oh, you know, she needs more help, and you get more help in every area in your life that you don't need help. So really, you know, celebrate might be the wrong word, but reinforce your independence and autonomy where you can be, and communicate that with others so that you really can practice those things you can do, and really also take a mental note of, okay, I may not be able to drive anymore, but I can do such and such and such and things, and just really don't let the feeling of I'm not independent at all now, to go like I'm not independent in driving a car now. So really break it down into factual things, like don't generalize it, just really for yourself, for your own mental stability, just really point out where you lost your independence and your autonomy. And the other thing is, just, really get support and talk about it, that people really understand your frustrations, because, your family maybe, what I found sometimes is just dismisses it really quickly and goes like, well, we talked about it, I know you struggle with this, so what? This is not news. But this is, emotions, they come and go. Just because everyone understands the situation doesn't mean that your emotions have to go away. So just really create a space where you can express your emotions with people that support you. Maybe get some peer support or some professional advice, and really, really keep fighting for the areas where you have autonomy and independence as much as you can. And also, if you have a bad day, tell them. Tell them if you're angry, or if, I'm just going to say, piss you off, because that would be the most normal reaction, I imagine. So, yeah, yep. Very difficult to do.
And Birgit, do you have some strategies for moving on from emotions once they have been felt and expressed? Sometimes it's easy to keep going around in a circle.
Ooh. I think I should do a doctorate about that question. Look, if I would have to be forced to give a recipe out there how to deal with it, I would just focus on the values and really put value-driven actions into your play. So go like, yeah, I'm still sad. Emotions come and go. So especially grief. Grief doesn't go linear. For example, if it's something that you grieve about, grief goes like this. You can be fine one day, then something happens and you go down, without really understanding why. And then you're fine again, and then you go down again. So I guess the first step is to know emotions come and go. You allow yourself to be emotional and make room for those feelings, even if you've been avoidant. However, put strategies into place that really accentuate your values. Like ask yourself, what makes my life meaningful right now? What makes my life meaningful in the next hour? What makes my life meaningful in the next 6 hours? What do I want to do at the end of the day? What do I want to do at the end of the week? But they don't have to be goals that make sense to anyone, just you. And just kind of like get that bit in there and just ask yourself, if you want to have support in finding out why you're avoiding it, what is so difficult, because very often people have a belief why emotional avoidance is more helpful than addressing it. Find out more why you want to avoid it, I guess. Sorry. Did that help? I don't know. They're such big questions that I'm not sure if that's helpful or not.
Someone else said they like the idea of visualising problems and letting the sun shine on them. Thanks for that thought.
Yeah, that's a really great one. It's my absolute favourite thing, Sometimes it's the sunshine, or you could also visualise, a memory where you feel like you're being hugged from the inside, or yeah, it's just something that really makes you feel looked after and warm and cared for. And feel free to do that for 5-10 minutes, It's not just a quick thing. Like really visualise it and look into it. Any more questions?
No, that's all for now.
So the goal of ACT altogether is having emotional flexibility and vitality, and so it's again, it's the focus is the outcome most of the time for emotional flexibility and vitality is increased happiness. But it's not the primarily aim, because ACT acknowledges life sometimes just sucks. It's about how can you get through this difficult time without, suffering. So I guess that's pretty much it from my perspective. I hope so. I tried to give you a little bit of an insight into ACT therapy, and I know it's quite a lot that I talked about. And please, if you only take one thing away from today, that's all. You don't have to understand the whole thing. I'm just trying to give you a bit of an idea of what might be interesting to investigate and what maybe you find out today this is something you want to do more or maybe not. Also, please be aware that this is my view of ACT theory. You know, I have quite a bit of training and extensive training in it, but in the end, every therapist puts it into their own framework. So just, you know, if you disagree with things that I said, you have the right to disagree. Feel free to you know, go to someone else who maybe has a different view about it, or maybe read some research. It's just, this is my take on it, you know, what I observe, and obviously everyone would observe different things and has a different opinion. And in the end, it's very much about what works for you. What do you find helpful? It can be, you know, the best model in the world. If you don't like it, it's not going to help you. So be really mindful about what you need and what you want. And just to give you a bit of information, so I think Andrea's sent you some worksheets, you know, that maybe can guide you a little bit after this presentation. You know, I've included a mindfulness exercise, a values exercise, how to commit to actions that you want to have, some thought diffusion, and some acceptance work. So just have a look at them. You don't have to do all of them, but you know, maybe a topic jumped at you today where you're like, oh, this is really interesting, and you just want to explore a little bit more. So have a look at them. And I just want to also say there is a lot of online support there, and contextual science and psychology.org.au are very helpful for finding an ACT therapist. The ACT community is really, really great, and I'm really grateful for them because they are very free with their resources. And just, you know, letting you know again that you can get 10 sessions per calendar year with a clinical psychologist or any psychologist. People very often ask me what's the difference between clinical psychology and normal psychology. Look, in the end, it's about who do you like best, what type of person do you feel comfortable talking to what person you have access to. And just, you know, a clinical psychologist just has a bit more training, I guess, and has a bit more university attendance. But in the end, you need to suss out, you know, with what person you feel comfortable talking to. That's the only thing you should be really concerned about. However, I do recommend a psychologist or clinical psychologist because it does require quite a bit of knowledge of therapy and how to formulate problems and mental health, I guess. What else? Yeah, I've written down some book recommendations. You know, some of them have a preview read online, like you can have a read of a couple of chapters, like the Happiness Trap, for example, has that. And yeah, feel free also to Google Mindfulness on YouTube. And I've also put some more resources down here and references, and very grateful for the ACT community because the ACT community is a very giving community, so it's a lot of, I guess it's very nurturing in that way and very sharing. So thank you so much for your patience with me. I hope I didn't confuse everybody even more. If you have any questions, maybe the time for it is now. I don't know, Andrea, how are we going?
Yeah, look, we can stay on as, well, not really as long as people want, but we can stay on for a bit longer. There's been a comment came in, it can be hard for, very hard for family to understand when I'm in a frustrated or angry moment and I can't get the words out to describe that I need space. Don't tell me just to settle down. Don't tell me to, don't let it get me down, that sort of stuff. I can't get them to understand. And I commented back to them that that's why it can be actually helpful to get some counselling support, because it's someone sort of outside the family that you even get a chance to grizzle about the family.
Totally. Look, this is, I mean, this is one of the biggest advantages of having a psychologist. We are neutral.
Yeah.
We are outside. We are you as a support person. And, you know, we don't live with you. You can tell us whatever you want to tell us. Like, be your personal cheerleader at the end of the day, you know. So it's great to have, you know. I love that about my personal therapist and supervisor, because I'm like, yep, you're neutral and you're paid to listen. Like, you can't tell me to stop talking. I'm allowed to express my feelings. So, yeah, really get support because that's a difficult topic.
Someone's put in a comment about the West Wing and how the president on the West Wing has MS.
Ah.
Oh, Kylie. Sorry, I should have read that before I read that. There's a couple of thank you comments, so that's great.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and just that comment that sometimes your own emotional adjustment actually affects the whole family as well.
Yeah, it's a dynamic system.
Thank you. It's a big subject that we've taken on.
Yeah, it's massive. I felt a bit guilty because I packed a lot in there. So, but I wanted to give you guys a bit of a buffet, and if something responded with you, you don't have to understand the whole model. Just take one thing.
Yeah.
Just one thing.
And that's absolutely any of our webinars that we run. We're never going to really make it individual because they are information sessions in some respects. So people need to take that information and either follow something up themselves, ring MS Connect, talk to their GP or their neurologist. So, yeah, it often is that it's just a starting point. I think that seems like it's about it. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Birgit, for your time tonight. And thank you, everyone, for being online. It's been great. And the comments you've been making have really contributed. I'm sure Birgit feels that as well. So that's wonderful.
Yeah,
and again, we would say, by all means, if you mull on it overnight, follow it up. If you've actually, someone sent me a message that they didn't have the handouts, because I have to take the list off for the handouts a few days before, if you register quite close to the night, I might not have sent you them, but you can let me know and I'll send you the handouts so you've got everything to read. Thank you to all those people who are now saying thank you. That's great.
Thank you, everybody. Good luck.
Thank you, Birgit. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.